So let's start our lecture today. And on behalf of Petro-Могила Black Sea National University, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you joining us today for this exciting guest lecture. We are delighted to have you here for this event, which is a part of our ongoing Jean Monnet model, which is supported by the European Union. And today we're honored to have David Reichardt, who is the professor of the Comenius University in Bratislava and an expert in the European Union issues, and who will share valuable knowledge of institutions and bodies of the European Union. This is a unique opportunity to learn, engage, and gain a deep understanding of the institutional structure of the European Union. So before we begin, I encourage everyone to participate actively, ask questions after the lecture, and make the most of this opportunity. So I will stop here, and I would like to give the floor to our speaker today. Please, Professor Reichert, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, uh, Professor Yochova. I want to just say that I have a little bit of a cough, a little bit bronchitis, so I have like sukrik. So I will be chewing a little bit, but I'm not chewing for pleasure, but to keep my voice. And I'm going to have some drink here during the lecture. So I hope my voice will be okay. So thank you for that. Thank you for the warm introduction. As the professor said, I will be talking to you today about the institutions of the European Union, the main institutions, because there are many institutions of the European Union. I'm going to talk about the main ones, and I'd like to share a screen with you and a PowerPoint. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. And let's see if I can make this work here. Let's see, slideshow. And from the beginning. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and it'll be a little bit Ukraine language, not so much on this one, but a little bit. And as you can see here, this opening slide, understanding the European Union, the institutions of the EU. And there are five big institutions that we will talk about in our meeting today, five big ones. And if you have any questions during the lecture, no problem. You can just unmute yourself and ask a question. That's fine. Okay, let's begin. I always start with kind of little bit funny quote. To understand Europe, you either have to be a genius or French. That's from Madeleine Albright. Maybe some of you remember Madeleine Albright was the American foreign minister during the time of Bill Clinton, President Clinton. What is she talking about here? Well, she's talking about the fact that the European Union is a very complex organization. It's very large, very bureaucratic. And because it's so bureaucratic, the word bureaucracy comes from the French language. they, uh, they invented this concept of bureaucracy, yeah. And so we associate agencies or institutions that have many employees, many departments with the French and originally and the bureau. But today, of course, every country has a bureaucratic government, huh? So that's what she's talking about here. You really have to be very clever to understand, or French. Well, that's just a joke. Of course, you don't have to be a genius. And as I will show you, it's actually quite simple, the basic institutions of the European Union. This is a quotation some years ago from the Economist magazine, British Economist. It says, forget geography, forget culture. The thing called Europe, it's about politics and economics. Yeah, so that's a very realist perspective by the Economist. It's about hard politics and hard economics. Right now, of course, we're talking about your country, Ukraine. And the Europeans are finally having to be serious about security in Europe without the Americans, maybe. So, yeah. So it's about real politics and real economics. Of course, I would say it's also about geography and culture. Yeah. But today, what is really controversial are the politics and the economics. Okay, so these are the five big institutions we will talk about today. We'll talk about maybe the most famous one, the European Commission. Then we'll talk about the Council of the European Union, it's called. And then we'll talk about the European Parliament, the European Court of Justice, and the European Council. So that's a little bit different than the second one. Although some people put them together and they say, oh, the European Council, it's part of the Council of the European Union. Yeah, sometimes people say that, but it's actually better to look at it as a separate institution, in my opinion. So let's have a look first at the European Commission. Now, the European Commission is based in Brussels, and it's what we call a supranational institution. So, what we're going to talk about in our lecture today, we're going to talk about these five institutions as supranational, intergovernmental, or democratic. We're talking about the character, the basic character of these institutions. The European Commission is supranational. Why? Well, I'll tell you in just a moment. It's based in Brussels. It was always based in Brussels, going all the way back to 1952. Today, it has 27 members because there are 27 member states of the European Union. And that includes one person called the president of the Commission. And these people altogether are called commissioners, the commissioners. They are there for 5 years, and they come all together as a group. And they all go out as a group after 5 years, but they can come back. They can be selected again and again. So that can be renewed, that 5 years for the individuals. But they all come in as a group and they all kind of go out as a group unless they are renewed. Now, each of these commissioners is given a portfolio area and a DG. What does it mean? Well, you have the president as a portfolio area. That's the role of one of the commissioners is the president. And I think you know who she is, Mrs. von der Leyen. Yeah, Mrs. von der Leyen is currently a commissioner, but she's also the president of the commission. So her portfolio area is the presidency. We'll talk more about what does she do with that. The other 26 commissioners, they are given a portfolio areas in energy, in agriculture, in finance, in foreign policy, all the typical areas of politics that are in your government. Yeah, they are reflected in the European Commission portfolio areas. And these commissioners are experts, right? They're experts in these areas. So that's why they are given a portfolio area. Now, they are usually given this portfolio area in consultation with the commission president. Now, they are also given a DG. What is a DG? Directorates General. It actually comes from a French phrase, Directeur General. And it basically is the bureaucracy that is under the commissioners. So, for example, let's say you are the commissioner for agriculture. That's your portfolio area, and you will have a directorates general helping you. That's the big bureaucracy of the agencies and departments in agriculture. And that's really kind of important because many people believe that it's the DG that really makes the programs and policies, and that the commissioner only kind of stamps it, stempel, approves it. Well, I think that's an exaggeration. The commissioners, they have a lot of opinion, they have a lot to say about programs and policies. But it's true that the director general, these departments, they do most of the heavy work in making these programs and policies, and then the commissioner will choose. The commission members, the commissioners, are proposed by their member states. So, for example, I'm living in Slovakia. Slovakia has Mr. Shevchovich. He was proposed to be a commissioner by the Slovak government. And then he had to be approved by the European Parliament and accepted into the group of commissioners. Every 5 years, they do this process, right? They make the group of 27 come in. What about the president? Who chooses the president? Well, actually, all of the commissioners together, once they are formulated, they choose one of their members to be the president. I believe it has to be a 2/3 majority vote. And that also then has to be approved by the European Parliament, the president. Yeah. Mrs. von der Leyen, she's now in her second commission. She was 5 years ago, the von der Leyen Commission, and now she was appointed again for a second 5 year term as president. Yeah. Okay, so members, the commissioners are proposed by their states and approved by the European Parliament and then appointed by the European Council to be one of their members. The president, as I said here, is proposed by the European Council, the other members, and elected by the European Parliament. Now, what are the roles of the European Commission? What's the main activity? I would say the number one is proposal role. The European Commission, kind of like the President of the United States, proposes new laws, proposes new legislation or laws of the European Union. Like the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he has no authority to make a law. He can only propose laws to Congress, and Congress has the authority to make the law. It's the same thing here. The Commission proposes, and the European Parliament, they decide if that proposal will be a law or not a law. Okay? So proposal role is the number one role of the European Commission. Now, a second role, excuse me, is, is the follow-up or oversight role. What does that mean? That means that after Parliament, European Parliament makes a law of the European Union, the Commission must observe the member states, how they are following that law. Are they obeying the law? Are they implementing the law? Are they actualizing the law? That's called the follow-up and oversight role of the Commission. And probably you heard about these Commission reports. You know, there's always reports. Some of the reports are quarterly year. Some of them are biannual, twice a year. Some of them are annual reports. And what they're doing, they're asking the member states, how closely, how correctly did you follow that law? Yeah. So many reports that the member states have to file, have to write, and send to the Commission on a quarterly, a biannual, or an annual basis. Okay. Now, what about the budget role? Yes, the European Commission proposes a budget every year. And the budget currently, I think it's about 155 billion, not million, but billion euros currently. I think it's you could check that on Google, see if I'm correct. But I think it's around in the middle 150s. Now, new member state role. That's for Ukraine, for example. Ukraine is a country that wants to be in the European Union, has applied to be in the European Union, and it's the Commission that opens the process for a new member state or a country that wants to be a member state of the European Union. And they follow that process all the way. That's the Commission's job. So, for example, the Commission has something called the acquis communautaire. It's basically the body of the laws of the European Union. And they have created with this acquis communautaire a book called of chapters. Like, for example, one chapter will be about democracy. One chapter will be about election. One chapter will be about rules of the rule of law, all these different parts of European Union. And the new state or the state that wants to be a new member they must close these chapters. I mean, they open the chapter, they do it, and then when they finish, they close the chapter. And the commission is monitoring this opening and closing of the chapters. It's like a book. And at the end, when the book is completely closed, then the country, for example, Ukraine, is ready to join the European Union. Now, the commission cannot actualize that. The commission only is monitoring the process. But at the very end, when Ukraine will close all of the chapters of this book, the member states of the EU will vote. That's right. The 27 member states, they will vote on Ukraine. Do we want Ukraine to be a member of the European Union, or do we not want Ukraine to be a member? And it must be 100% agreement. So if one member state says no to Ukraine, then Ukraine will not become a member in that year. Now they can try again the next year, yeah, of course. This happened, this happened with Slovakia in 2004. No, what was it? 2003, 2004. The Eastern European countries of Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, in 2003, 2004, they wanted to be members of the European Union. And one country, I think it was one, maybe more, but I think it was one, Ireland, they voted against. And so these 10 candidate countries, they couldn't be members of the EU that year. Now, they waited a year, and the Irish had a referendum. And in the referendum, they said, okay, now we accept Slovakia and the other 9 countries can be members. And so that's interesting, huh? So you have to have all 27 members say yes, for example, to Ukraine. And then Ukraine will be a member of the European Union. Okay. Now, is there going to be a problem with that for Ukraine? Could be, maybe with Hungary, huh? With Viktor Orban. Could be in Slovakia with Mr. Fico. I don't think so. I think that that Mr. Fico in Slovakia and Mr. Orban, they are against Ukraine in NATO, but I don't think there's so much against Ukraine in European Union. But we will see. We will see. Okay, next role is foreign policy role. The European Commission has one person who's the foreign minister, we can say. It's actually, the title is the High Representative for Foreign and Diplomatic Policy. Yeah, I'll talk about it in a minute. And so this commissioner goes around the world as the foreign minister for the EU. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Second foreign policy role is foreign trade. The European Commission has a trade commissioner, trade, business around the world. And they work with the World Trade Organization, the WTO. They are in contact with the Americans, the US government about trade. Donald Trump, he wants to put tariffs now on the European Union, especially in coal and steel. And so we will see now what will happen with that. The European Trade Commissioner will be very active with Mr. Trump in trying to make a compromise about the tariffs. Yeah, President Trump, he loves tariffs. He loves, but for Trump, this is my personal opinion, putting the tariffs or saying that he's going to put tariffs, I think it's more of a uh, kind of a motivation for countries to do what Mr. Trump wants. Like, for example, Trump is talking about tariffs on Mexico. Uh, and if Mexico does not cooperate more on the border with the immigration to the United States, then Trump is going to put tariffs on Mexico. So at this time, no, he didn't. But it's a threat. It's a threat, right? So this is the way Trump is thinking, in my opinion. Security, of course, security policy. That's what we're talking about now, that the European Union will make a stronger security policy. And this is also the role of the high representative, the foreign minister of the commission, the commissioner for foreign policy. And then treaty role. Now, when the European Union is negotiating with another country around the world, maybe an agreement or a treaty, it's the commission that opens up this process of making an agreement or treaty with what we call third parties around the world or other countries in the world, like the United States of America on tariffs. If there will be an agreement, the European Commission will begin the process of making that agreement. Yeah. And has to approve that agreement. The Commission must approve that for it to be. Now, how do they do that? Well, the European Commission has 140 delegations around the world. They call it the European External Action Service. You know what it is? It's basically consulates. We would say today consulates. Like in Bratislava here, we have the British consulate. Yeah, it's an office for representing the country, and the European Union has 140 of these around the world, and it's organized by the Commission. Okay, and that's where they do a lot of their foreign policy work in diplomacy, foreign trade, security, and treaties. Yeah, through this external action service. If you want to learn more about that, put it in Google, European External Action Service, maybe Wikipedia, and they'll go into more detail about these different delegations around the world. One of the biggest one, of course, the most important, is the one in Washington, D.C. European Union is very active in Washington, D.C. with its delegation there. Now, commissioners, these 27 people, they swear an oath. What is an oath? A promise at the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg City. And what do they promise? They promise to respect the treaties of the European Union and to be completely independent in their duties. Yeah, they should not be manipulated. Yeah, the commissioners are proposed by the Council of the European Union on the basis of suggestions by their national government. So again, it begins with the member states. They select who they want to be their commissioner. Now remember, each member state gets only one commissioner. So the governments of the member states, they nominate somebody, they select somebody, and then this has to go through an approval process. Yeah. And the European Parliament, as we said, has to approve that. And then finally, they can be incorporated into the College of Commissioners. This is their building in Brussels, very famous and very interesting shape to this building, so that everybody who sees this photo or sees oh, that's the Commission, yeah, because it has a very interesting style of architecture. Here's the Commission president. This is her second 5-year period as Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen. Now, she's German. She's the commissioner from Germany. Yeah. And she was selected by the others to be the president of the commission. She was formerly the defense minister of Germany. Yeah, she was Minister of Defense of Germany before she became the commission president. I believe she has 5 or 6 children, and she's a medical doctor. Wow. So she is really qualified. I don't know how somebody can do all those things. It just makes me, I just can't imagine somebody so busy. Anyway, but so she's kind of an amazing person. Yeah. This is her commission. Now you can see her in the front row in the middle. That's her. And those are her 26 commissioners. So altogether 27, one from each member state. Trying to, let's see, where's Mr. Shevchovich from Slovakia? I think he usually has a big smile on his face. He's always big smile. And I think he is he's not in the last row. He's in the second to the last row on the far right side. I think that's Mr. Shevchovich with the striped tie. I think that's Mr. Shevchovich from Slovakia. I'm not sure, but I think that's him. What is his portfolio area? Well, I'll tell you in just a little bit. But I just took this from the internet. This is the commission. And this is kind of nice because it gives a little description of each of these. And what is their portfolio area? Yeah. Are they involved in energy, agriculture, trade, foreign policy? Yeah, so that'll give you an idea of their. You can just download this also from the internet. Now, I put here the actual European Commission is not only the 27 commissioners, but around 32,000 European civil servants. They are the ones who are in this Directorates General bureaucracy that I told you about, huh? So, if you would like to work for the European Union, there's a good chance you could get a job for the European Commission. There are a lot of people working there and a lot of people going out of work and new people coming in. So if you want to go to Brussels and try it, yeah, you could, definitely. The Directorates General are each headed by a Director General who reports directly to the Commissioner in that policy area. As I said to you earlier, many believe it is the Directorates General who have the real power in the Commission, because they are the ones who are really writing the details of these possible programs and policies. Yeah. And then the Commissioner just selects from 2 or 3 or 4 alternatives. This is the Commissioner for Foreign Policy, Foreign Affairs. Today, she's just starting her job this year. Her name is Kaya Kallas. Maybe you remember that she was the first female president or prime minister? Prime minister? I think prime minister of Estonia. Estonsko, yeah, Estonia. And she left the prime ministership to become the high representative for foreign affairs and security policy. And I think it was a really good selection because she's right on the front line of the conflict with Russia and Ukraine, right? The Baltic states. So she understands security very, very well. And of course, as we know, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia have large Russian minorities. And they're very worried that Mr. Putin will start focusing on the Baltic states and saying, we have Russians there too. They should be incorporated into Russia. So this is what we're worried about, huh? So I think she was a good selection now she's just one of the commissioners. She's the commissioner from Estonia, and she is given this portfolio area. I think she's quite young. She's about, I think now I looked up her age. She's 40, I think 46 years. This is our, from Slovakia, Mr. Šefčovič with the big smile. And he's, oh, by the way, when it says vice president of the commission, there are actually, I believe it's 7 vice presidents. There are 7 of these people. Oh, I'm sorry, we lost, sorry about that. Let me try to get back to sharing here. Let's see, I'm going to stop. And I had a little problem here with that. There are 7 vice presidents. And why are there 7 vice presidents of the commission? It's to focus on the fact that these are the important portfolio areas. These are important ones. So there's 7 of those in a vice president, they're called. And Mr. Šefčovič is, why is he there? Well, his portfolio area is the interinstitutional relation and foresight. What does that mean? That means the relations between the Commission and the Parliament and the Council of the European Union and the Council of the European Union and the European Council and all of the institutions and the European Court of Justice. So he has an important job to kind of keep them happy together. And foresight, it means vision for the future about these institutions, how in the future they can improve their relations. So that's Mr. It's a good, and he's very friendly, so I think he's a good guy for that. Okay, let's go to our next. Oh, by the way, before I do this, I'm going to go back, see if I can go back here. Yeah, let's go back just to the commission, just for a second here. I'm just going to go back here. The European Commission, as I said very briefly, has the character of supranational, we say. Supra, sounds like Superman, yeah? Supranational means going above the nationalism of the member states. So, for example, Mr. Šefčovič, let's go back to Mr. Šefčovič here. He is not representing Slovakia, okay? He's from Slovakia, and he was selected by Slovakia, but if he's doing his job in the commission, he's in like a college. We actually call it a college of commissioners. Why college? What's the word college? Collegiality. They should be one together, 27. What is best for the European Union? Not what is best for Slovakia or for Mrs. Kallas, not what is best for Estonia or Mrs. van der Leyen, not what is best for Deutschland. No, what is best for the European Union. That's called supranational character. And they promise. Remember, I said they take a promise that they will do that they will focus on what is best for the whole European Union, not their member state. Okay? So please remember that the Commission has supranational character. Now, the Council of the European Union is different. It has an intergovernmental character. That's the opposite of the supranational. Intergovernmental means the governments of the 27 member states, or the how could you say it? The interests of Slovakia, the interests of Poland, the interests of Germany, Latvia, Spain, Portugal. If you're in the Council of the European Union, that's what you are focused on, the interests of your country, not what's good for the whole union. And this is called intergovernmental character. You know, an easy way to remember this? Supranational is another word for federal, federalism, a federal Europe, yeah? And intergovernmentalism is a European Union word for confederal, confederal. So the Council of the European Union is more the confederal institution, and the Commission, the European Commission, is the federal. Yeah. Okay. So why? Why is this what's the reason? Well, let's start here. The Council of the European Union is based in Brussels. It's, I would say, the most secretive of the five big institutions. Secret, we call it the James Bond 007 institution. Why is that? Well, you can imagine that if this is intergovernmental and Slovakia is fighting against Germany and Germany is fighting against Italy and against Luxembourg, you don't want the cameras in there. You don't want the media there, right? All that stuff. We know what happened last week with Trump and Mr. Zelensky, President Zelensky, yeah? When the cameras are there and you have an argument. No, see, they don't want that here. That's why it's closed door meetings usually. Now, there's a rotating presidency and every 6 months. And what's interesting about the presidency for the Council of the European Union, it's not a person. The president is actually a country for 6 months. Does anybody know which country has the presidency of the Council of the European Union right now? You can unmute. Yeah, Poland. Yeah, you can Google that one. Poland is the current president, Polsko, yeah, of the Council of the European Union. Now, it is known informally as the Council of Ministers. That's the old name. So if you hear, oh, the Council of Ministers, it's the formal name is the Council of the European Union. Now, there are actually 10 councils in the Council of the European Union. And these follow the portfolio areas, like in the Commission. So you have an Agriculture Council, you have ECOFIN, Eco-Economy and Finance, you have Foreign Affairs Council. You have 10 of these representing the 10 big activity areas of the European Union. Now, on each of the councils, the 27 member states have a representative on each council. Yeah. And in addition, on each of these 10 councils is the commissioner for that portfolio area. So, for example, let's take the Agriculture Council of the Council of the European Union. What do you have there? You got the 27 agricultural ministers of the 27 member states, okay? The 27 agricultural ministers plus the commissioner for agriculture. Now, why? Now, I should say that the commissioner does not vote, but is there. Now, what's the point of including a commissioner on these councils? Well, remember I told you that what they're doing is that they're arguing in these councils. The representative of Slovakia, the agricultural minister of Slovakia is fighting with the agricultural minister of Portugal or Ireland, yeah, for funds, for funding or whatever, yeah. Well, the commissioner is there to say, hey guys and girls, let's get together. Come on, let's cooperate. To make them less selfish, you put the commissioner in there to motivate cooperation. Now, the council, these councils, they vote in three different ways. On some topics, they vote unanimously, must be 100%. I think the only area, I could be wrong about this, but I believe the only area that they still need 100% of the council voting is in foreign affairs, foreign policy. When they're voting on the common foreign security policy, something about Ukraine or something has to be 100%. In most cases, it's just a majority vote. And very often a qualified majority vote, means a certain percentage of votes from a majority of the member states. Okay, qualified, could be a 2/3 vote or whatever. It depends on the topic. It depends on what topic they're talking about, how they're going to vote. Okay. Now, what is the main role of the Council of the European Union, or these 10 councils? Well, it's decision-making role. Remember when I told you the main role of the Commission is to propose? Yeah, they propose a new law of the EU. Well, the Council of the European Union, or these 10 councils, they say yes or no. And they do that with the European Parliament. And we'll talk about the Parliament in just in a short while. But we call this co-decision making. The Council of the European Union must say yes to the possible new law, and the European Parliament must say yes to it. Okay? Co-decision making role with the European Parliament. Now that's a change. A few years ago, the European Parliament had no vote, had no voice. It only recommended. And it was the Council of the European Union that had the only decision-making role. But now it shares this decision-making role with the European Parliament, co-decision-making role. By the way, what is the role of the presidency every 6 months? Well, let's say, for example, Poland is the president for 6 months, from January to the end of June. It's Poland. What does that mean? Well, Poland will be calling the meeting of these 10 councils of ministers in Brussels. And on each of the 10 councils, Poland, or the representative of Poland, will be the master of ceremony, will set the agenda. So, for example, on the Agriculture Council with the 27 agricultural ministers, it'll be the minister from Poland, the agricultural minister from Poland, that will be the organizer of that council meeting and set the agenda. Yeah, and that's a big power, because if you can make the agenda for a meeting, wow, yeah, that means you're going to talk about these topics and you're not going to talk about these other topics. So it's quite a lot of power to be president for 6 months of these councils. Yeah. So I put here again, the president is not a person in this institution, but a country. Now, 3 successive presidencies together are called a presidency trios. And so what do we have? What's our current president trios? Well, we have Poland is the current one, January to June 2025. Then comes Denmark, will be from July to December 2025. And then Cyprus will come in January 2026 until June. Now, why? What's the point of the trios? It's to make a smooth transition and to keep everything smooth and running well. They meet together. These 3 country representatives are meeting together to coordinate and make smooth the Council of the European Union council meetings. Now, here are the 10 councils: General Affairs, Foreign Affairs. Excuse me, I'm going to take another bonbon here. The Economic and Financial Affairs, Agriculture and Fishery, Justice and Home Affairs. Students, you can find this on the internet. This is just basic information. The 10 councils. Employment, Social Policy, Health and Consumer Affairs Council, Competitiveness, Transport and Telecommunications and Energy, Environment, and Education, Youth, Culture, and Sport. Okay, those are your 10 councils. So, for example, look at the one Transport, telecommunication. Now, that could be the 27 ministers of transportation, or energy. maybe. It depends. The member state decides who's going to be there from their country. But, you know, it's going to be like environment. It's going to be the 27 environment ministers for sure of the 27 member states, plus the commissioner from the European Commission for Environment. Okay, now we come to our next institution. Now, if you remember, the European Commission is supranational character, yeah, federal. The Council of the European Union is intergovernmental. That means that you must be fighting for what's best for your country there. Excuse me, what is the character of the European Parliament? I would say the best way, democracy. It's the democratic institution, okay? We could say it like that. It's based, interestingly, in 3 cities. The Parliament building is in Strasbourg. That's where they meet for the formal voting. So if you visit Strasbourg, France, you can visit the Parliament building. Beautiful city, Strasbourg. Has beautiful cathedral there. Famous cathedral with a rose window, a famous rose window. Huh? Luxembourg is the administrative office of the European Parliament. And Brussels, this is where the members of the European Parliament, this is where you will meet them most of the time, because that's where they're doing most of their work in their offices in Brussels, not in Strasbourg. Now, why don't they move the European Parliament? Just move the whole thing to Brussels. Wouldn't that be more logical? Well, in my opinion, yes. The reason that it's still in France is because the French. It's been in France since the beginning, back in the 1950s, and it's kind of prestige. So that's why they did not move it to Brussels. But it would be logical and probably save a lot of money if they would move everything to Brussels. Yeah. Okay, now there's a president elected for a 5-year term. Currently, it's a woman president. I forgot her name, but we can Google that very quickly. And the president makes the agenda for the parliament. Now, there are 720 members currently in this parliament. Now, think about that. 720 members of the European Parliament. You know, that is a huge number. The United States Congress, you know how it's only 535. This is 720. So it's really big, and it can be a little difficult to organize it. They are elected by the people of their member states for 5-year renewable terms. And this was a little bit of a question for my Slovak students. How many members? I think Slovakia currently has 13 of these 700. Because Slovakia is a little country. I think they have 13 of these 700. I could be wrong about that, but we can check it. Now, what do these 720 members do? Well, they meet in standing committees. There are 22 standing committees. Now, standing does not actually mean standing up, although maybe they are doing that. Standing in English, it means existing on a more or less permanent basis. That is, they don't really change these committees. And these 22, again, they are the portfolio areas of the European Union. There's an agriculture standing committee. There's an energy standing committee. There's a trade standing committee. There's a foreign policy, foreign affairs standing committee. And it is the president of the European Parliament who is suggesting which members will be on which committees, depending on their expertise. Yeah, because these are people coming from Parliament, usually in their own country, and they have certain expertise, and they will be put on a standing committee that is related to their area of expertise. Now, the standing committees are typically not meeting in Strasbourg. They're meeting in Brussels. That's again why most of the time you will find the members of the European Parliament not in Strasbourg, but in Brussels, meeting together with their standing committee, and then they will go back to Strasbourg for the formal voting. Now, what is the main role of the European Parliament? The main role is, we already said a little bit, decision-making role together with the Council of Ministers or the Council of the European Union, the one we just talked about. Huh? We call that co-decision role. So they get a proposal for a new law from the Commission. Remember, the Commission proposes, it goes to the Parliament, it also goes to the Council of the European Union. And they both have to say yes or no new law. Now, what if one says yes, like the Parliament says yes, but the Council of the European Union says no? Well, then they will form a little committee. We call it conference committee. And they will try to make an agreement. And so they can both say yes. But if they cannot, if they can't make agreement, then no new law of the EU in that case. Yeah. Now, what's another role of the Parliament? Approving the budget. Remember, the Commission proposes a budget every year, how much money we will spend, and it's the Parliament that has to approve that budget. Consent procedure. The Parliament has to give its consent to this budget process, to this legal process. Yeah, so we call that consent procedure. New member states and treaty approval. Well, do you remember when we talked about the Commission opens the process with Ukraine to be a new member state? And then when it's finished, that book is closed, the Parliament must approve Ukraine, and then all 27 member states must approve Ukraine. And then finally, treaty approval. After the Commission begins the process to make a treaty or an agreement with the Americans, for example, or Japanese, it's the Parliament that finally has to approve that treaty. Okay? Now, at the end, the Parliament also approves a new commission every 5 years. Remember, a commission of 27 commissioners, they come in together as a group, and the Parliament has the authority to kick them out if there's corruption. And then they all go out together. Not one of them, but they all must go out. You know, that almost happened in, I think it was 1997, the commission of Jacques Santer. Jacques Santer, he was from Luxembourg, and he was at that time, 1997, he was the European commission president. And there was some corruption in his commission, not him. He was not corrupt, but Parliament was about to kick them all out. And then finally he said, okay, we're leaving. And they all left together. I can't remember. In 1997, how many member states were there? I think we had about, what was it, still 15. And so they all went out, you know. But yeah, that's a big power. They can kick out a sitting commission, all 27 of them, if there's corruption or if there's some problem. Okay, now, what about the political parties? Well, you know what's interesting about the European Parliament? The members of the Parliament, these 720 people, they don't sit together by their country. So, for example, if Slovakia has 13 members of the European Parliament, they don't sit together, these 13. No, they sit according to their ideological group. Now, they don't always call it party, but they use the word group a lot. Now, why don't they say political party? Well, a political party is something that's very highly organized in most countries. And in the European Parliament, I would say these are not political parties, but they're very loose and very wide and very broad kind of groups. They're very kind of collections of people that share a certain ideology. but it's not so detailed as it would be for a member state. So the most, I would say, the most dominant in the history of the European Parliament, including today, is this first one, the group of the European People's Party. These are the conservative and Christian democratic members of the European Parliament that sit together from all the different 27 countries. They sit together in this group. It's called European People's Party. Yeah, these are the conservative or Christian Democrats. Okay. Oh, let's see. I lost you again here. Let me do this one more time. Sorry about that. Okay. Oh, say I'm a little ahead of myself now. Back to where we were. Okay. The second most popular group today is and this is traditional. It's usually the People's Party and then the Socialist group for years and years and years. It's the same today. The Socialist group, these are the progressives in Europe, socialists, I would say center-left Democrats. The third largest group today, they call themselves the Patriots for Europe group. This is right-wing to far right. Yeah, they became very popular now in Europe. It used to be for years, the third strongest group was the liberals, but now it's this right-wing group. So that's interesting. They call themselves the Patriots for Europe group. Now, here's what it looks like today. This is fresh information. If you look at the blue there, the light blue, this is the European People's Party, the light blue. Yeah. And if you look at the red, that's the S&D, the Socialist and Democratic group. Okay. So those are the two dominant. Mm-hmm. And then the PIE, this is this darker blue, and this is this far right. And then you have a number of other parties there. NI means those who are not not associated with any group. Yeah, that's at the very end. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, the People's Party still dominates, and they're the conservatives, and they've dominated the European Parliament for years. You could see they have very strong support over the socialists. Yeah, so the 188 versus the socialist group 136. So still pretty dominant. This would be the kind of the Angela Merkel type conservatives, Christian Democrats. Yeah. Now, what are the types of European law that the Parliament is voting on? Well, there are basically three types of European law that you should know. The very first type, and these are names they're all European law, but these are particular names of the types of law. The first one is called a regulation. This is the strongest type of a European law, and it's directly related to the member states. That is, the member states must follow exactly the law as it is written. No change, no change. That's why it's called the strongest type of a law, a regulation of the European Union. Yeah, if Parliament says yes to a regulation, that's pretty strong. Regulations cannot be changed by the member states. The member states must follow it exactly in the language that is presented. Now, number two, this is a little bit different. It's called a directive. It is a European law. It's a different type of European law. The goals are more flexible. Well, there are goals. Let me say it better than that. The goals are not flexible, but how you go to those goals is flexible. The method that you go is flexible. So, for example, very often it'll be in the area of environment. Well, with environmental law, some of the member states are very wealthy, rich, like Germany, Denmark, Netherlands, and they have no problem to make an environment to realize the environmental law. But some of the poor countries like Portugal, Spain, Romania, Greece, that's more difficult for them to realize the environmental law. So they will have exceptions, and there will be different timetables for them to realize the law. That's called a directive. It's more flexible depending on the member state. And then the third type of a European Union law is a decision. You've probably heard of decisions. Decisions are laws that are specifically focused on one member state or a couple of states, like maybe Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Czech Republic, like the Visegrad Four, or a particular group inside a member state, or even a particular person in a member state. It's a focused type of law, highly focused. So you have these three types of European law, and they are European law. Okay, they're law. The last one here is not a law. It's called recommendation and opinion. It's non-binding. What it means is that the European Parliament, anytime it wants, can give its opinion about what should be a law. Now remember, only the Commission can propose, but the Parliament can suggest to the Commission, yeah, hey, wouldn't it be good to have a law like this, a recommendation or an opinion? So that's, yeah, they can, but so that's something different than European law, but it's something also that the European Parliament can do. Okay, now we come to our next institution, and this is the Court of Justice. So let's talk a little bit about the Court of Justice. Well, you remember that I told you the Commission is the most supranational character. The Council of the European Union is the most intergovernmental character. The Parliament, the European Parliament, is the most democratic character. What is the character of the European Court of Justice? I would go back and I would say supranational. What's good for the whole union? Remember, justice must be blind. Yeah, you've seen the famous statue of the justice with the blind. Yeah, the justice must be blind because it's justice. Yeah, so I would say supranational, representing the whole union, not only what's best for Slovakia or what's best for Italy. Yeah, but what's best for the whole union. This one is based in Luxembourg. Yeah, the Court of Justice sits in Luxembourg City, Luxembourg. The working language here is French. Now, you know what's interesting? The working language for all the other institutions, more or less, is English. But here the working language is French. By the way, many people will respond to the question, what is the official language of the European Union? And the answer is actually, there is no official language. There's 24 official languages of the European Union, 24 representing the languages of the member states. Okay, so everything must be translated into these 24 languages. So it's true, the working language is French, but that must be translated into all the other languages. Okay, there are 27 judges. In English, the word is justices. What's the difference between a judge and a justice? A justice is prestige, higher prestige. So in America, we have judges, but then we have the United States Supreme Court, and we call them justices because it's high prestige. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have 27 justices on the European Court of Justice. They are appointed by the member states for 6 years at a time. And they can go again. They can go again, yeah, another 6 years. Can they go more than twice? I don't know. Maybe somebody there knows. I don't know. I think yes, but I don't know. I have to check that. There are 11 advocates general or advisors. Now, this sounds a little bit boring, but actually it's not boring. These advocates general are appointed by the member states and they rotate on a rotating basis. And these people have a lot of power, maybe more power than the justices, because they decide which court cases will go to reach the ears and the eyes of the justices. So they're like the filter, because there are many cases, yeah, legal, and the Court of Justice, they can't hear all of these cases. So the advocates general, they recommend the cases, the most important cases, to the 27 justices. So that's big power. Now, what is the role of the European Court of Justice? Well, number one, European Union civil law role. Now, that's only about EU law. That's not about the laws of Slovakia or Poland or Germany. That's only about EU civil law. Again, no criminal law. There is no EU criminal laws. Yeah, it doesn't exist. It's only about civil law. It's about money, transactions, all these things. Yes, civil law. Now, what can the European Court of Justice do? Well, a couple of things. They can make a direct action. You have a case, you have a proponent and an opponent, and and the Court of Justice will make a decision who is right and who is wrong. Okay, that's called a direct action. But most of the time, what the court is doing is called preliminary ruling. What is that? Well, let's say, for example, there's a new EU law, a new regulation, or a new directive, and a member state doesn't really understand the language. So they will question the Court of Justice. What does this mean? What's the interpretation of that language? And the Court of Justice will give what's called a preliminary ruling. They will give their interpretation before anything goes farther, before something continue. Preliminary interpretation. It's interesting. That's what the Court of Justice is doing most of the time. Now, the last role, and this is a big role, is the constitutional law role, because the Court of Justice is a constitutional court. Well, you might say, but the European Union, it doesn't have a constitution. So how can the Court of Justice be a constitutional court? Well, actually, the European Union does have a constitution. It's the treaties of the Union over the many years, the treaty. Now, it's true, there's not a constitution in one document, really nice and organized, like in the United States, one constitution. Doesn't exist. Now, they tried it a few years ago. It completely failed. So it's the treaties. The treaties of the EU are the Constitution. And the Court of Justice interprets those treaties. So it is a constitutional court. Now, the next point, no domestic state civil law, they have no role in Slovakia civil law, and no criminal law role. Doesn't exist European Union criminal law. Maybe in the future it will, who knows? But at this time, there's no criminal law. What about murder? What about all kinds of crime? That's the member states. They have criminal law, but not the EU. Now, with the Treaty of Lisbon, they actually named the court formally now, the Court of Justice of the European Union. So that's the formal name of the court now. But everybody says the Court of Justice, just like Court of Justice. And the Treaty on Lisbon, it made a lower court called the General Court to help the Court of Justice. So now there are actually two courts of justice. There's this lower court called the General Court and the higher court to lighten the amount of work because there was just too many cases. Guy, Miroslav Gavalets, he has been there, I think he's been twice now. He was there 6 years, and now he got a second 6 years on the Court of Justice from Slovakia. So every member state gets, and it's the same, by the way, it's the same for the lower court, for this general court. On the General Court, you have again 27 justices from appointed by each of the member states. Okay, here's the logo of the Court of Justice. Very dramatic. And now we come to our last institution in this lecture, the European Council. What is the character of the European? I would say again, it's supranational. I will explain why in just a moment. It's based in Brussels since 2002. What is it? Well, the European Council, it's the 27 heads of state, like the presidents of the country, or the government, the prime minister. So, you know, some of the member states, they have their president there, like France, Macron. Macron is there. And some of the I would say most of the member states, they send their prime minister because that's where the power is, in the prime minister. Not in France. The big power is with the presidency in France. A little bit different system. So the member state can choose. Do we send our head of state, our president, or do we send our prime minister? I think 90% send their prime minister. It also includes the council president. There's a president of this council. We'll talk about that. And it includes the commission president, Mrs. von der Leyen, and the commissioner for foreign affairs, Mrs. Kallas. Now, the European Council president is a person selected for 2.5 years to guide this European Council. What's the role? Well, they appoint the commission president, Mrs. von der Leyen, and they must approve all the commissioners every 5 years with the parliament together, with the European Parliament. Yeah, they have to approve. What's their main role? I would say their main role is visionary. Where do we want this union to go in the next 5 or 10 years? Oh, thank you. I think my voice is leaving me, but I think we'll finish. I'll be able to finish, I think. Proposal role. You might say, well, I thought, Mr. Reichard, I thought you said that, I thought you said only the commission can propose. Well, that's true. But the European Council can suggest proposals to the commission. Remember, it's the European Council that selects the commission president and the commissioners. So they have a lot of influence over the commission. They meet about 4 times now regularly. We call them summit meetings. So that means my prime minister here, Mr. Fico in Slovakia, or Mr. Orban, or Mr. Tusk in Poland, they are going to these meetings in Brussels about 4 times a year of the European Council. Here is the president of the European Council. His name is Antonio Costa. He's new. He just started in January. And he is from Portugal. He was the prime minister of Portugal. And now he was selected by the others to be their president for 2.5 years. So, yeah, so we'll see how he does. You know, the guy before him was Charles Montel, and he was from Belgium, and he just finished in December. So this is the new one. Okay, a conclusion of this lecture. The 5 main institutions of the European Union each represent different forms of supranationalism, intergovernmentalism, and democracy, which ultimately give the EU its unique character. And here is a little bit in Ukrainian language. Oh, I did it. I did it. Yeah, it's perfect ending because I think it's just finishing my voice. So I turn it back to Alina.
Thank you very much, Professor Reichert, for this super informative lecture. And actually, we have we have no time for a question, but at least we have two questions from a chat. Maybe you would like to answer for at least one of them. So I just would like to read. This is the questions from our PhD student Konstantin Kartuzov. And the first question about the making structure of the European Union. So the question is, don't you think that such a complex of decision-making structure based on universal consent will potentially prevent the European Union from taking swift decisions in response to the actions of partners such as President Trump, for example? This is the first question. And the second one, I understand that you personally admire the ability of small countries in the European Union to influence decision making, but don't you see these mechanisms as a threat? Countries such as China or Russia could lobby for their own decisions, block decisions against them by buying Hungary, for example.
Very good. Well, okay, I'll start with the first question. You know, Henry Kissinger, you remember Henry Kissinger? He was the famous foreign minister of the United States with President Nixon, Henry Kissinger. And you know, Henry Kissinger, he had a famous phrase. If I want to call Europe on the phone, who do I talk to? What's the telephone number for Europe? And what Kissinger was talking about, he was talking about the fact that you have these five institutions and many more. Those are the big five, and power is distributed. So you have the Commission with some power, you have the Council of the European Union with other power, you have Parliament with some power. Power is fragmented, and it's not always so clear which institution at which time has the power on which topic area. And it makes it very difficult, this fragmentation, to organize nicely policy positions, especially, I would say, in foreign policy. We can see how slow is the European Union on foreign and security policy in the context of the Ukraine situation, for example. How slow they are, because it's very bureaucratic, and you have these different institutions with different types of authority and trying to come together, but is very difficult sometimes. That's why there are many proposals for reforming the European Union. For example, instead of having a parliament only and then a council of the European Union, you know, the co-decision where they both have to say yes, one proposal is to bring them together in one big parliament with a lower part of parliament, kind of like a US Congress, like a House of Representatives and a Senate. And the Council of the European Union would be like a Senate in a new parliament. And that would be much more logical, maybe much more organized, and help people to understand, and also make the policy process much smoother. Yeah. Right now, it's difficult. If you think about the common foreign and security policy of the European Union, it's, you know, in my opinion, it's highly unorganized, yeah, because you have different centers of power, and then the member states must all agree or no foreign policy. All 27 must agree. As you mentioned with Mr. Orban, if Mr. Orban says no to Ukraine, it stops everything, yeah. And so going into the second question, that's a problem too, that a small country can stop the whole process. Just imagine what I told you in 2003, when 2003, 2004, when Ireland, little Ireland, stopped 10 candidate countries from coming into the European Union. And only Ireland, and then the next year they changed their mind. And so we are here now. We are in the EU. So that's a problem. That can be. Now, some people see that it's not a problem, but that's a bonus, because some of the people who are Eurosceptic, they don't want the European Union doing too much. They think the European Union is a multi-leg monster. and they would like a smaller European Union that doesn't do too much, and the member states do more. That's called the Eurosceptic. So I think they would be happy to keep the system fragmented and where small states can block things. So it depends on your view. Do you support a stronger EU? Do you support an EU with with a more organized policy? Or do you think that the EU is already doing too much and it should be the member states that are more active? Yeah. Just looking at Ukraine, should Ukraine focus more on Brussels and Mrs. von der Leyen and Mrs. Kallas for support, or should they look to Germany and the new prime minister, the new Bundeskanzler? Because Germany is the power country in middle of Europe. Maybe that's where Ukraine should focus its energy for support. So it's a question of perspective and opinion. What is your perspective and what is your opinion? That will answer your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your response.
Thank you very much, Professor Reichert, for your answer. And today we are finished with our lecture. And once again, thank you, Professor Reichert, for your insightful lecture and for sharing your expertise with us today, for your time and for your experience. It has been an invaluable opportunity to deepen our understanding of the institutions and bodies of the European Union, and we are grateful for the knowledge you have imparted. I would like also to extend my thanks to all of you for your participation in our lecture today. And once again, thank you for your great speaker and talk, Professor Reichert, and to all of you for attending. Have a nice day.